Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Barkha Dutt and we are back with Keeping It Simple, breaking down the most complex news stories and issues of our time into simple, easy to follow facts and opinions. Today I want to ask you a simple question. Why does the Congress party, the party that was in a sense the symbol of India's independence movement, today find itself in a position where it's constantly on the defensive when it comes to issues of national security, nationalism, patriotism and so on? I thought of this when I saw Rahul Gandhi's tweet. Rahul Gandhi went on Twitter today to tell Pakistan that irrespective of whatever disagreements he has with the Modi government's Kashmir doctrine, it was not for Pakistan to meddle in that space, and that the violence, to quote him, in Jammu and Kashmir was patronized by Pakistan. Now, of course, Rahul Gandhi had to issue, in a sense, this public statement after his earlier statements criticizing the Kashmir doctrine, the crackdown on opposition leaders, the curbs on communication and information, statements made by not just him but also by his sister Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. These were statements that were picked up by Pakistani politicians, by the Pakistani government, and in fact even used in Pakistan's petitions, as it were, to different global bodies asking them to intervene. Now, naturally, the Congress found itself on the defensive as the BJP and the BJP supporters accused them of speaking the language of Pakistan. Now, here's the point. It is, of course, Rahul Gandhi's right as an opposition leader and as an Indian citizen to criticize the Modi government's policy, especially in the light of the fact that different opposition leaders, different mainstream politicians today find themselves arrested for more than 3 weeks without there being any transparency on the charges under which they've been put away, and without there being any clarity as to when they will be released. And these were men and women who stood for the flag of India. So it is Rahul Gandhi's right, like it is the right of any Indian citizen, to criticize their government. That said, politics is all about perception, politics is all about messaging, politics is all about getting the zeitgeist of the times. And perhaps Rahul Gandhi would have been better served when he criticized the Kashmir doctrine to make the point he's making about Pakistan-backed terrorism then. What I'm trying to say is that there can be many simultaneous truths about Jammu and Kashmir. I'm somebody, for example, who has repeatedly criticized the arrest of these mainstream politicians, who has urged the government to lift the communications and information blockade, who has tried to bring you the human stories that people are suffering, that people go through anxiety and anger when they can't reach their loved ones. But I have simultaneously made it a point to call out Pakistan's doublespeak on this, to point to how Pakistan itself has followed a very sort of dodgy set of politics when it comes to parts of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, including Gilgit and Baltistan. So, and I'm not in public life, I'm a journalist. Rahul Gandhi and his party being in public life, its party first spoke in different voices on Article 370. They couldn't even get a cohesive, singular position on that. Rahul Gandhi lashed out at the government when he was not allowed to visit the detained leaders and not allowed to come out of the airport. That is his right. But given that he's in public life, given that the Congress already finds itself on the defensive, perhaps Rahul Gandhi needed to make the point about Pakistan-backed terrorism and Pakistan-backed violence in Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan fishing in troubled waters in Jammu and Kashmir, at the same time as he was making a domestic point that is his right to criticize Modi's Kashmir doctrine. In this, one of the things that liberal politicians and in fact Indian liberals in general need to think about is whether they have ceded the entire nationalism space to not just the right wing but to the extreme right wing, perhaps by undermining how the majority of Indians feel about the flag, about the constitution, about soldiers, about men and women in uniform. By ceding that entire space to the right wing, you've actually allowed the right wing and television anchors masquerading as sort of the biggest self-appointed patriots to judge fellow citizens. I don't agree with that at all. I do not agree with the kind of hashtag warriors we see on primetime television, who've never actually perhaps even been to a battlefront, most of them have not even been outside the comfort of their television studios, and they're lecturing Indians on what is nationalism, what is not. They're calling people anti-national and so on. But how did we get to this point? According to me, we got to this point because liberal political parties and liberals in general mocked and undermined and scoffed at any sort of nationalist discourse, any sort of sentimentalism about about the state, the symbols of the state, the flag, the constitution. And when that happened, and when anyone who did this was called a jingoist, was called a stooge of the government, was called a stooge of the state, was not seen as liberal enough, what ended up happening is that this entire space ended up belonging and being owned and appropriated only by not even the right wing, but by the extreme right wing, where the mere act of dissent or a differing opinion then got you labeled an anti-national. So I believe that Rahul Gandhi, liberal politicians, the Congress party and liberals in general today find themselves out of sync because they refuse to own this space. And in this, Rahul Gandhi had a mentor at home in his own family, Indira Gandhi, who carved Bangladesh out of Pakistan, whose 1971 war earned her accolades from Atal Bihari Vajpayee, her political adversary, who told Richard Nixon where to get off so that Nixon would say later that Indira Gandhi had suckered him. Nixon hated Indira Gandhi for the 71 war because at that time America's interest in opening a channel with China, they did not want anything happening in terms of the dismemberment of Pakistan, and he sought that assurance from Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi went ahead and did what was in India's national interest, and is regarded even today by even the BJP voters as one of the biggest, fiercest nationalists of her time. In fact, it's been pointed out by commentator after commentator that if there's one contemporary political figure that Narendra Modi has styled himself on, it is Mrs. Gandhi. And in that sense, not just on nationalism, but even in brooking no dissent and other qualities which we can discuss at another time. But here the point is that Rahul Gandhi could have taken a leaf out of his grandmother's book, Indira Gandhi, and the way she handled and responded to Pakistan, and closer home to a comrade in his party, Amrinder Singh, who has shown that it is possible to be soldierly, to be sort of proudly patriotic and yet not lose his humaneness vis-a-vis Kashmiri students, for example, who study in Punjab. It is possible to do both. And where Rahul Gandhi, the Congress, liberal politicians and liberals in general are falling behind in capturing, in a sense, the sentiment of the time, is that they think that this is an either-or game, that the only two things that are placed before them as choices are this kind of aggressive, muscular nationalism that brooks no dissent on the one side, and this kind of, this kind of contempt for sentimentalism about the Indian state on the other. And the truth is that I believe that most Indians do sit squarely in the center. Indians are proudly patriotic. Indians feel strongly about their military. And to that extent, we are very much like the Americans. And if you look at American politics, there is actually no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans on issues of American nationalism. The military veterans, for example, how they're treated, how they're honored. You will not find a distinction between those who are registered Democrats and those who are registered Republicans. Hillary Clinton, for example, as a Democrat was often called a hawk. So what I'm trying to say is that the Democrats and Republicans separated their politics on social issues, on issues of the economy, but never on issues of nationalism. And the Congress and Indian liberals and liberal politics in general finds itself besieged today because it has allowed one of its features that separates it from the BJP to be that on how it responds to symbols of the Indian state. And it is time to remember that most Indians want respect for the symbols of the state, want respect for the soldier, want respect for the sense of being Indian, and at the same time do not want to give up their humaneness. So you could appeal to the humaneness of Indians, to the civil liberties enshrined in the Constitution, and ask for a more human touch in Jammu and Kashmir. But you cannot do that without locating it within the larger framework of the fact that this is also an insurgency where terrorists have been pushed across the line of control and where terror has been repeatedly patronized, along with a certain kind of radicalism that today tends to infect what was once a political issue. So that, I think, is something that Rahul Gandhi and liberals and liberal politics and liberal politicians need to remember.